The smell of coffee and betrayal filled the air at 6:47 a.m. on what should have been the happiest day of my life. I stood frozen in the doorway of our bedroom, watching my fiancée Isabella ride her ex-boyfriend Connor like she was trying to win a championship. "Oh God, Connor, yes!" she screamed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his broad shoulders. The same shoulders that used to belong to the quarterback who peaked in high school and never quite figured out what came next. I'm Jack Mallory, 38 years old, owner of Mallory's Classic Auto Restoration in suburban Detroit. I fix things for a living, engines, transmissions, broken dreams of middle-aged men who think a restored Camaro will bring back their youth. But standing there watching my world implode, I realized some things can't be fixed. They were so lost in their passion, they didn't notice me. Connor's ass pumped up and down while Isabella moaned beneath him, her engagement ring, the one I'd saved 6 months to buy, catching the morning light as she gripped the headboard. "Harder," she gasped. "Jack never sleeps with me like this." That's when I cleared my throat. Isabella's eyes snapped open, meeting mine in the mirror across the room. Her face went white as Connor continued thrusting, oblivious to our audience. "Connor?" she whispered, trying to push him off. "What, baby?" he grunted, still going at it. "Connor, stop!" He finally looked over his shoulder and saw me standing there in my tuxedo, holding my morning coffee like some kind of pathetic butler who'd walked in on the master of the house. "Oh shit," Connor said, scrambling off her. His dick was still hard, pointing at me like an accusation. I took a sip of my coffee. It was good coffee. The expensive stuff Isabella insisted we buy because image matters, Jack. Everything with Isabella was about image. "Don't stop on my account," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I was just wondering if you needed anything before I head to the church. Maybe some towels, a different venue for the reception." Isabella sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. Her perfect blonde hair was a mess, her makeup smeared. She looked more beautiful than I'd seen her in months. "Jack, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted, because from where I'm standing it looks pretty self-explanatory. You're sleeping with your ex-boyfriend on our wedding day, in our bed, with my coffee brewing downstairs and my tux hanging in the closet. Connor was trying to put on his pants, hopping around on one foot like an idiot. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed, actually laughed. "Really? Because it looks like you're screwing my fiancé. What does it look like to you? Advanced yoga?" "Jack, please," Isabella said, tears starting to flow. Real tears or crocodile tears? With Isabella, you never could tell. "It just happened. We were talking about old times and your clothes fell off? Amazing how that works. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It starts as a cold spot in your chest, then spreads outward like ice water in your veins. I'd suspected something was going on for weeks. Isabella had been distant, secretive about her phone, working late more often. But suspecting and knowing are two different animals entirely. Connor finally got his pants on and stood there shirtless, trying to look tough. He was bigger than me, 6'2" to my 5'10", probably 50 pounds heavier. Former high school football star, now selling insurance and apparently screwing other men's fiancées in his spare time. "Maybe we should talk about this like adults," he said. "Adults?" I set my coffee cup on the dresser. "Adults don't sleep with their ex-girlfriends on other people's wedding days, Connor. Adults don't sneak around behind people's backs. Adults sure as hell don't stand there half naked in another man's bedroom talking about maturity." Isabella was crying harder now. "Jack, I love you. This was a mistake, a terrible mistake." "You love me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. "When? Between spreading your legs for Connor or when you were screaming his name?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Get out," I said quietly. "Jack, both of you, get out of my house, now." Connor grabbed his shirt. "Come on, Izzy, let's go." Izzy, he called her Izzy. Only her closest friends called her that. I'd been with her for 2 years, and she'd always insisted I call her Isabella. They dressed quickly and headed for the door. Isabella paused at the threshold, looking back at me with those green eyes that had convinced me to propose in the first place. "What about the wedding?" she asked. "What about it? The guests, the venue, the reception, everything's paid for." I smiled, and it felt like broken glass in my mouth. "Don't worry about the reception, Isabella. I'll make sure everyone has a good time." After they left, I sat on the edge of the bed where my fiancée had just been getting the best intimacy of her life from another man. The sheet still smelled like intimacy and her perfume, that expensive French stuff she wore to make herself feel sophisticated. My phone buzzed. Text message from my best friend Mike, who was supposed to be my best man. "Getting nervous, buddy. Big day." I stared at the phone for a long moment, then typed back, "Plans have changed. Still having the reception, though. Should be interesting. The next text was from Thalia West, Isabella's maid of honor and best friend since college. Thalia was everything Isabella wasn't. Brunette instead of blonde, curvy instead of skinny, real instead of plastic. She worked as a forensic accountant, which meant she was good at finding things people tried to hide. Morning. Ready to become Mrs. Mallory? I looked at that text for a full minute before responding. Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to have lunch today, just you and me. Her response came back immediately. What about the wedding? There isn't going to be a wedding. Long story, but I could really use some company from someone who isn't a lying whore. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Jack? What happened? Thalia's voice was soft, concerned. Real concern, not the fake sympathy Isabella specialized in. I caught her with Connor this morning, in our bed. Silence on the other end. Then, that witch. I'd never heard Thalia swear before. It was oddly comforting. So, I said, about that lunch. You free? I'll pick you up in an hour. Thalia arrived at 11:30 a.m., driving her sensible Honda Civic, wearing jeans and a blue sweater that made her eyes look like sapphires. She'd clearly been crying. Her makeup was smudged, and her nose was red. I'm so sorry, Jack, she said as I got in the car. I had no idea. If I'd known, you would have told me. She looked at me with those honest eyes. In a heartbeat. We drove to Murphy's Diner on 8 Mile, a place Isabella would never be caught dead in. Too blue collar, she'd say, not the right image. But Murphy's had the best burgers in Detroit, and right now I needed something real. Thalia ordered coffee and picked at a piece of pie while I told her everything. How I'd suspected something was wrong. How Isabella had been distant and secretive. How I'd walked in on them that morning. How long? Thalia asked when I finished. I don't know. Weeks? Months? Does it matter? She was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee. It matters because I've been doing Isabella's books for the past year. I looked up from my burger. What do you mean? Your business books, Mallory's classic auto restoration. Isabella hired me to handle the accounting when you guys moved in together. Okay. Jack, there are some irregularities. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. Irregularities. In accountant speak, that was like saying the Titanic had a small leak. What kind of irregularities? Thalia pulled out her phone and showed me a spreadsheet. Numbers, dates, transactions. It looked like gibberish to me, but her finger traced a pattern that made my blood run cold. Over the past 18 months, there have been systematic withdrawals from your business accounts, always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic reviews, always when you were out of town at car shows or auctions. I stared at the numbers. How much? $87,000. The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. That's impossible, I would have noticed. Not if someone was very careful about covering their tracks, moving money between accounts, creating false invoices, timing the withdrawals perfectly. She looked at me with those honest eyes. Jack, Isabella has been embezzling from you. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Pure, clean rage that felt better than anything I'd experienced in months. Can you prove it? I already have. I've been building a case file for weeks. I was going to talk to you after the honeymoon. Why? Because Isabella is my best friend. Was my best friend. I kept hoping I was wrong, that there was some explanation. She reached across the table and took my hand. But after what happened this morning, I think we both know what kind of person she really is. Her hand was warm, soft, real. When was the last time Isabella had touched me like that? When was the last time she'd touched me at all, except to push me away in bed? Thalia, I said. Yeah? Would you like to go to a wedding reception tonight? She smiled, and it was like sunrise after the longest night of my life. I'd love to. Oh, we spent the afternoon at her apartment, going through the evidence she'd compiled. Bank statements, invoices, transfer records. Isabella had been stealing from me for over a year, probably using the money to fund her lifestyle. The expensive clothes, the fancy dinners, the weekend trips she claimed were for business development. She's been planning this for a while, Thalia said, showing me another document. Look at this. She opened a separate account 6 months ago, right around the time Connor started his insurance business. You think they're in it together? I'd bet money on it. Connor's business has been struggling. Public records show he's behind on his commercial rent. His business license is about to be suspended for non-payment of fees, but suddenly he's driving a new BMW and taking expensive trips. I looked at the evidence spread across Thalia's kitchen table. My fiancée and her ex-boyfriend had been systematically robbing me blind while I worked 60-hour weeks to build something I thought we were building together. "What do we do?" I asked. Thalia's smile was sharp as a blade. "We destroy them." At 4 p.m., we drove to the reception venue, the Riverside Country Club, where Isabella had insisted we hold our reception because the right people would be there. The same people who would witness her downfall in a few hours. The place was decorated exactly as Isabella had planned. White roses, gold accents, elegant lighting. 200 guests were expected, including Isabella's boss, Connor's business associates, and half the social climbers in suburban Detroit. I found the wedding coordinator, a nervous woman named Janet, who kept checking her clipboard. "Mr. Mallory, thank goodness you're here. I was starting to worry. Where's the bride?" "Change of plans, Janet. The wedding's off, but we're still having the reception." Her face went white. "Off? But the guests, the food, everything stays the same. I'll make an announcement when everyone arrives." I slipped her a $100 bill. "Just make sure the microphone works." By 6 p.m., the country club was packed. Isabella's family, Connor's business partners, our mutual friends, people who'd known us as a couple, who'd bought wedding gifts and gotten dressed up to celebrate our union. Isabella and Connor showed up at 6:15, looking confused and worried. Isabella had changed into a cocktail dress, black, which seemed appropriate. Connor wore a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. They found me at the bar, where I was nursing a whiskey and talking to Thalia. She looked stunning in a red dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. "Jack," Isabella said, "what's going on? Why are all these people here?" "It's our reception, remember? You spent months planning it." "But the wedding?" "There was no wedding. But I figured, since everyone was already here, we might as well celebrate something." Connor stepped forward, trying to look tough. "Look, man, we need to talk about this morning." "Do we? I think this morning spoke for itself." Isabella looked around the room, seeing all her friends and colleagues mingling, drinking, waiting for something to happen. "Jack, please? Can we discuss this privately?" "Why? You didn't seem too concerned about privacy this morning." Thalia squeezed my arm. "It's time." I walked to the front of the room and picked up the microphone. The conversations died away as everyone turned to look at me. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to what was supposed to be Isabella and my wedding reception." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Isabella's face was pure panic. "Unfortunately, there was no wedding today. You see, this morning I discovered that my fiancée has been having an affair with her ex-boyfriend Connor for the past several months." The murmurs turned to gasps. Phones came out. People started recording. "But that's not all," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "I also discovered that Isabella has been embezzling money from our joint business. $87,000 to be exact." Isabella tried to rush the stage, but hotel security, who I'd briefed earlier, gently restrained her. "The evidence has already been turned over to the police and the district attorney's office. Criminal charges will be filed on Monday morning." The room erupted. Isabella's boss pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Connor's business partners were staring at him like he'd grown a second head. "But," I said, raising my voice over the chaos, "I don't want this evening to be a total loss, so I'd like to introduce you to my new girlfriend, Thalia West." Thalia joined me at the microphone, taking my hand and kissing me in front of 200 shocked guests. The kiss was real, passionate, everything my relationship with Isabella had never been. "Thalia's the forensic accountant who uncovered Isabella's theft," I announced. "She's also the most honest, beautiful, intelligent woman I've ever met. And unlike some people, she's never stolen from me or slept with her ex-boyfriend in my bed." The crowd was in complete chaos now. Some people were leaving, others were taking pictures. Everyone was talking at once. Isabella was crying, Connor was trying to disappear into the crowd, and Thalia was smiling like she'd just won the lottery. I handed the microphone back to the DJ. "Play something upbeat," I told him. "We're celebrating." Monday morning came with a knock on my door at 7 a.m. Detective Sarah Martinez stood on my porch with a cup of coffee and a badge, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Mallory? I'm Detective Martinez, Wayne County Sheriff's Department. I understand you filed a complaint about embezzlement?" I invited her in and showed her to the kitchen, where Thalia had already laid out all the evidence in neat, organized folders. Thalia had spent the night, not for intimacy, though the thought had crossed both our minds, but because she was worried about Isabella or Connor trying to destroy evidence. "This is very thorough," Detective Martinez said, flipping through the bank statements and invoices. "Ms. West, you did excellent work documenting this." Thalia blushed. "I just did my job." "Your job was to catch your best friend stealing?" "My job was to keep accurate books. When I found discrepancies, I investigated. The fact that my former best friend was the thief doesn't change my professional obligations. Detective Martinez spent 2 hours going through everything. The pattern was clear: systematic theft over 18 months, always timed to avoid detection, always just under the amounts that would trigger automatic reviews. "We'll need to freeze the accounts where the money was transferred," she said, "and we'll need to bring in both Ms. Russo and Mr. Hayes for questioning." Isabella Russo. I'd almost forgotten that was her real last name. She'd been so eager to become Isabella Mallory, to take my name and my money and my life. "What are the charges?" I asked. "Grand theft, embezzlement, conspiracy if we can prove Mr. Hayes was involved. We're looking at felony charges, possible jail time." After Detective Martinez left, Thalia and I drove to my shop. Mallory's Classic Auto Restoration occupied a converted warehouse on the east side of Detroit, with 3 service bays and an office that overlooked the Detroit River. My employees, Tommy, Dave, and Miguel, were already there, working on a 1967 Mustang that belonged to a collector in Bloomfield Hills. "Boss," Tommy called out when he saw me, "how was the wedding?" There wasn't one. Tommy was 62, had been working on cars since before I was born. He looked at me with the kind of wisdom that comes from seeing everything twice. "Good," he said. "That woman was trouble." "You knew." "Boss, we all knew. Woman like that doesn't belong with a man like you. Too much plastic, not enough real." Dave and Miguel nodded agreement. These guys had worked for me for 5 years, had seen Isabella come and go, had watched her treat them like servants while spending money that came from their hard work. "There's more," I said, and told them about the embezzlement. Miguel whistled low. 87 grand. Shit, boss, that's like a year's salary." "The police are handling it. But I wanted you guys to know first." Tommy wiped his hands on a rag. "What do you need us to do?" That's why I loved these guys. No judgment, no drama, just loyalty and the willingness to work. Keep doing what you're doing. Build cars, make them beautiful, take pride in the work. Everything else will sort itself out. My phone rang while we were talking. Unknown number. "Jack, it's Connor. We need to talk." "No, we don't. Look, man, I know you're pissed, but this is getting out of hand. The police came to my office this morning. They're asking about money, about Isabella, about stuff I don't know anything about." I looked at Thalia, who was listening to my side of the conversation. She made a keep him talking gesture. "What stuff, Connor?" "Bank accounts, transfers, business deals. They think I was involved in some kind of scheme." "Were you?" "No. I mean, Isabella helped me out a few times when my business was struggling, but I didn't know where the money came from. I thought it was from her job." Thalia was frantically taking notes, recording the conversation on her phone. "How much money, Connor?" "I don't know. Maybe 30, 40,000 over the past year. She said it was bonuses from her consulting work." Consulting work. Isabella's day job was managing social media for a small marketing firm. She made maybe 40,000 a year, barely enough to cover her shopping habits, let alone loan money to her ex-boyfriend's failing business. "Connor, you're screwed up," I said. "You took stolen money. That makes you part of the conspiracy." "But I didn't know." "Doesn't matter. You're going to jail." I hung up and looked at Thalia. 40,000. "That we can prove. Probably more we can't." She was already pulling up bank records on her laptop. "Look at this. Connor's business account shows deposits that match withdrawals from your accounts almost exactly. Same dates, same amounts. How stupid are they?" Criminals usually are. They think they're smarter than everyone else, but they make basic mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Jack, please call me. We need to talk before this goes too far." I showed the text to Thalia. "What do you think?" "I think she's panicking. The police probably talked to her this morning, too." I called Isabella back. She answered on the first ring. "Jack, thank God. Listen, I know you're angry, but I'm not angry, Isabella. I'm done. This is all a misunderstanding. The money, Connor, everything. I can explain." "Explain it to the police?" "The police don't understand our situation. They don't know about the business, about how we shared everything." "We didn't share everything, Isabella. You stole everything." Her voice changed, became harder. "You can't prove that?" "Actually, I can. Thalia documented every transaction. Bank records, invoices, transfer dates. The district attorney has enough evidence to put you away for 5 years. Silence on the other end. Then, "Thalia? Your former best friend. The one who's been keeping your books. The one who caught you stealing. That witch? I should have known she was jealous of what we had." "What we had? You mean the part where you slept with your ex-boyfriend or the part where you robbed me blind?" "Jack, please. I made mistakes, but we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... Isabella, there is no we. There never was. You were just using me until something better came along. That's not true. Really? Then why did you steal my money? Why did you give it to Connor? Why were you sleeping with him in my bed on our wedding day? No answer. I'll tell you why, I continued, because you're a selfish, lying, stealing whore who thought she could play me for a fool, but the joke's on you, because now everyone knows what you really are. I hung up and looked at Thalia, who was staring at me with something like admiration. Feel better? She asked. Actually, yeah, I do. Tuesday brought more visitors. This time it was Isabella's lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Richard Blackwood from Blackwood, Sterling and Associates. Mr. Mallory, I represent Isabella Russo. I think we can resolve this matter without involving the criminal justice system. I was in my office at the shop, going through invoices and trying to figure out exactly how much Isabella had stolen. Thalia sat across from me, her laptop open, cross-referencing bank statements. How's that? I asked. My client is willing to make full restitution, every penny plus interest and penalties. In exchange, you drop the criminal charges. Thalia looked up from her computer. That's not how it works. The district attorney filed the charges, not Jack. He can't just drop them. Blackwood smiled the kind of smile that probably cost $500 an hour. The DA is more likely to plea bargain if the victim is cooperative. Your client stole nearly $90,000 from me, I said. She gave a significant portion of it to her boyfriend to prop up his failing business. She was planning to leave me after the wedding and take half of everything I'd built. Why would I want to help her avoid consequences? Because a lengthy trial would be expensive and time-consuming for everyone involved. I don't mind. I've got time. Blackwood's smile faltered. Mr. Mallory, I don't think you understand the situation. If this goes to trial, everything comes out. Your business practices, your relationship with Miss Russo, your current situation with Ms. West. I looked at Thalia, who was glaring at the lawyer like he was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. What current situation? She asked. Well, it's rather convenient that the accountant who discovered the embezzlement is now dating the alleged victim. Some might question the timing. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Thalia closed her laptop and stood up. Are you suggesting that I fabricated evidence? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply pointing out that juries sometimes have questions about situations that seem orchestrated. I stood up too. Get out. Mr. Mallory, get out of my office before I throw you out. Blackwood gathered his briefcase and headed for the door. My client's offer stands until the end of the week. After that, things get more complicated. After he left, Thalia was pacing around my office like a caged animal. That bastard, she muttered. He's trying to make it look like we planned this whole thing. Did we? She stopped pacing and stared at me. What? I'm kidding, but you have to admit the timing looks suspicious. Jack, I've been documenting Isabella's theft for months, long before you and I got together, long before the wedding. I know, but a good lawyer can make anything look suspicious. My phone rang. Detective Martinez. Mr. Mallory, we've made an arrest. Isabella. Connor Hayes. We picked him up this morning at his office. Ms. Russo's lawyer contacted us about a possible plea arrangement. I looked at Thalia. They arrested Connor. She nodded grimly. Isabella's throwing him under the bus. Detective, what kind of plea arrangement? I can't discuss details, but her lawyer seems to think she can provide information about other financial crimes. What other financial crimes? That's what we're trying to find out. Can you come down to the station this afternoon? We'd like to go over your statement again. The Wayne County Sheriff's Department looked exactly like every police station I'd ever seen in movies. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, the smell of bad coffee, and desperation. Detective Martinez led us to a small conference room where she'd spread out all of Thalia's evidence. We've been going through the bank records, she said. The pattern suggests this isn't Ms. Russo's first time. What do you mean? Thalia asked. Before she started working with you, she was employed by Hartwell Marketing. They fired her 18 months ago for irregularities in expense reporting. No charges were filed because the amounts were relatively small, but the pattern is similar. She's done this before, I said. Multiple times, we think. She targets small business owners, usually men, usually people who trust her with financial access. She embezzles systematically, then moves on before anyone notices. I felt sick. So I was just another mark. I'm sorry, Mr. Mallory, but the good news is that we have a very strong case. With Ms. West's documentation and the bank records, we can prove systematic theft over an extended period. What about Connor? Mr. Hayes is claiming ignorance, says he didn't know the money was stolen, but the amounts and timing suggest coordination. Detective Martinez pulled out another folder. There's something else. Ms. Russo opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands 6 months ago. She's been transferring money offshore. Thalia whistled. How much? We're still working with international banking authorities, but preliminary estimates suggest at least $50,000. I stared at the paperwork. Isabella hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been preparing to disappear entirely. The wedding was probably just a final score before she vanished with my money. What happens now? I asked. We're offering Mr. Hayes a deal, full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. If he provides information about the offshore accounts and Ms. Russo's other activities, he might avoid jail time. And Isabella? That depends on what Mr. Hayes tells us. We left the police station with more questions than answers. Isabella wasn't just a cheating fiancée, she was a professional con artist who'd been systematically destroying my life while planning her escape. I feel like an idiot, I told Thalia as we drove back to my house. You're not an idiot. You're a trusting person who got taken advantage of by a professional criminal. How did I not see it? Because she was good at what she did. She made you feel like you were building something together while she was tearing it down from the inside. That night, Thalia cooked dinner at my house. Real food, not the pretentious crap Isabella used to order from expensive restaurants. We ate spaghetti and meatballs at my kitchen table and talked about everything except Isabella and Connor and stolen money. Tell me about your family, I said. Not much to tell. Parents divorced when I was 12. Mom moved to Florida. Dad stayed in Michigan. I see him on holidays. Siblings? One sister. She's a teacher in Grand Rapids, married with 2 kids. Thalia smiled. What about you? Only child. Parents died in a car accident when I was 25. That's when I started the business. Used their life insurance money to buy the shop. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, but it's part of why I work so hard, you know? They never got to see what I built. Thalia reached across the table and took my hand. They would have been proud. We were sitting on my couch, watching a movie, when my phone rang. Unknown number again. Jack, it's Connor. I'm at the police station. They want me to make a deal. Good for you. Listen, man, I'm sorry about everything. Isabella told me you guys were basically over, that the wedding was just for show. And you believed her? I wanted to believe her. Look, I know I screwed up, but I'm trying to make it right. By selling out Isabella? By telling the truth. She's been running this scam for years, Jack. You weren't the first, and you wouldn't have been the last. I looked at Thalia, who was listening to every word. What do you mean, I wouldn't have been the last? She was already working on her next target. Some guy in Chicago who owns a construction company. She was going to leave you after the honeymoon and move there. The room started spinning. Isabella had been planning to abandon me from the beginning. The wedding, the promises, the future we'd talked about, all of it was a lie designed to keep me distracted while she finished robbing me. Connor, I hope you rot in jail. Jack, wait. I hung up and looked at Thalia. She had another mark lined up. I heard? A construction company owner in Chicago. We should call Detective Martinez. But before I could dial, my phone rang again. This time it was Isabella herself. Jack, Connor's lying to save himself. Don't believe anything he tells the police. Why would I believe anything you say? Because I loved you. I still love you. You have a funny way of showing it. Everything I did was for us. The money, the planning, all of it was so we could have a better life. By stealing from me? By building something bigger. The construction company in Chicago, it was going to be our fresh start. Our fresh start? Isabella, you were planning to leave me. Only temporarily. Once I got established there, you could have sold your business and joined me. We could have been partners in something huge. I stared at the phone in amazement. Even now, caught red-handed, facing criminal charges, she was still trying to manipulate me. Isabella, you're delusional. I'm ambitious. There's a difference. You're a thief and a liar. I'm a woman who saw an opportunity and took it. You were never going to be successful staying in that little shop, fixing old cars for middle-aged men having midlife crises. I was trying to save us both. By destroying everything I built, by building something better. I hung up and turned off my phone. Thalia was staring at me with a mixture of sympathy and amazement. She really believes it, Thalia said. She actually thinks she was doing you a favor. She's insane. No, she's a sociopath. There's a difference. 3 weeks later, Connor's cooperation had unraveled Isabella's entire operation. The Chicago construction company owner, a man named Robert Chen, who owned Chen Brothers Construction, confirmed that Isabella had been cultivating him for months, claiming to be a business consultant who could help him expand into Michigan markets. Detective Martinez called me on a Thursday morning with an update. We've recovered about 60% of your money from the offshore accounts. Ms. Russo's been charged with grand theft, embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Mr. Hayes is pleading guilty to conspiracy and will testify against her. What's she looking at? 5 to 10 years, probably serve 3 with good behavior. 3 years seemed like nothing for destroying someone's life, but it was better than the plea deal her lawyer had been pushing for. There's going to be a restitution hearing next week, Detective Martinez continued. You'll need to testify about the financial impact. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at the Wayne County Courthouse. Isabella would be there, along with her lawyer, the prosecutor, and a judge who would determine how much money she owed me and in what time frame. Thalia and I spent the weekend preparing my testimony. We documented every aspect of the financial damage. Not just the stolen money, but the business opportunities I'd lost, the credit damage from bounced checks, the cost of forensic accounting to unravel her theft. The total impact is probably closer to $150,000, Thalia said, showing me her calculations. That includes lost business, damaged credit, and the cost of rebuilding your financial systems. Monday night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow I would face Isabella in court, probably for the last time. I would tell a judge how the woman I'd planned to marry had systematically destroyed everything I'd worked for. Thalia stayed over, not for intimacy, but for moral support. We'd been taking our relationship slowly, building something real instead of the fantasy Isabella had constructed. Are you nervous? She asked as we lay in bed. Yeah, but not about testifying, about seeing her again. What do you mean? I keep wondering if I'll still feel something for her, if part of me will want to forgive her. Thalia was quiet for a moment. Would that be so bad? What do you mean? Forgiveness isn't about her, Jack. It's about you, about not carrying that anger around forever. She doesn't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, but you deserve peace. Tuesday morning arrived gray and cold, typical Detroit weather that matched my mood. The courthouse was a massive stone building downtown, the kind of place where justice was supposed to happen, but usually just ground people up in bureaucratic machinery. Isabella was already there when we arrived, sitting with her lawyer at the defendant's table. She'd lost weight, looked older, more fragile than the confident woman who'd been planning our wedding just a month ago. She looked back when I entered the courtroom, and for a moment our eyes met. I waited for some feeling, anger, sadness, regret, but there was nothing. She was just a stranger who'd once shared my bed and stolen my money. The prosecutor, a serious woman named Janet Walsh, called me to testify first. I walked to the witness stand and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Mallory, Walsh began, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? We were engaged to be married. We lived together for 2 years and ran a business together. What kind of business? Classic automobile restoration. I'm a mechanic, and she handled the business side, marketing, bookkeeping, customer relations. Did you give Ms. Russo access to your business accounts? Yes, we were planning to get married. I trusted her. Can you describe how you discovered the theft? I told the story, finding the bank statements, hiring Thalia to investigate, discovering the systematic pattern of theft over 18 months. What was the financial impact on your business? Direct theft was $87,000, but the total impact was much higher. Damaged credit, lost business opportunities, the cost of forensic accounting. My accountant estimates the total damage at about $150,000. How has this affected you personally? I looked at Isabella, who was staring at the table in front of her. It destroyed my ability to trust people. It made me question every relationship, every business decision. She didn't just steal my money, she stole my confidence in my own judgment. When Walsh finished, Isabella's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Mallory, isn't it true that you and Ms. Russo shared all business expenses? We shared living expenses. The business was mine. But she worked for the business without salary, correct? She worked part-time and took a percentage of profits. How much of a percentage? I looked at Thalia, who nodded encouragement. 20%. 20% of a business she helped build, helped market, helped manage. It was my business. I owned the equipment, paid the rent, employed the workers. But without Ms. Russo's marketing and business development, would the business have grown as much as it did? The question hung in the air. Isabella had been good at marketing, had brought in new customers, had helped grow the business, but that didn't justify stealing from it. She was compensated for her contributions, I said finally. With 20% of profits from a business that generated over $200,000 a year in revenue? That was the agreement we had. An agreement that gave you 80% of the profits from a business she helped build? Walsh objected. Relevance, Your Honor. I'll allow it, the judge said. Isabella's lawyer continued. Mr. Mallory, is it possible that Ms. Russo felt she deserved a larger share of the business she helped create? If she felt that way, she should have discussed it with me, not stolen from me. But you've testified that you made all the business decisions unilaterally. Would you have been open to renegotiating her compensation? I thought about it honestly. Would I have given Isabella a bigger share of the business? Probably not. I'd built it with my own hands, my own money, my own risk. I don't know, I admitted. Thank you, Mr. Mallory. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt like I'd been put through a meat grinder. Isabella's lawyer had made it sound like she was some kind of underappreciated business partner instead of a thief. Thalia testified next, walking through the forensic evidence with clinical precision. Bank statements, transfer records, timeline of thefts. Her testimony was devastating, clear, factual, unshakable. In your professional opinion, Walsh asked, was this theft systematic and premeditated? Absolutely. The pattern shows careful planning over an extended period. The amounts were calculated to avoid detection, the timing was designed to coincide with Mr. Mallory's absences, and the money was immediately moved to accounts controlled solely by Miss Russo. This wasn't a case of someone taking money they felt they deserved. No. This was professional-level embezzlement designed to systematically drain Mr. Mallory's business while avoiding detection. When Thalia finished, Isabella's lawyer called Isabella herself to testify. She walked to the witness stand wearing a conservative blue dress, her hair pulled back, looking like a Sunday school teacher instead of a woman facing felony charges. Miss Russo, her lawyer began, can you describe your relationship with Mr. Mallory? We were partners in every sense of the word. We lived together, worked together, planned a future together. Did you consider yourself a full partner in the business? Yes. I handled all the marketing, customer relations, bookkeeping. I brought in most of our high-end clients. Did you feel fairly compensated for your contributions? Isabella looked directly at me for the first time since the hearing began. No, I felt like Jack saw me as an employee instead of a partner. I was doing 60% of the work for 20% of the profits. Why didn't you discuss this with Mr. Mallory? I tried, but Jack made all the decisions. He saw it as his business, even though I was the one who made it successful. I wanted to stand up and scream. She was rewriting history, making herself the victim. Did you take money from the business accounts? I took what I felt I deserved, money I had earned through my work. Did you intend to repay this money? It wasn't borrowed money, it was compensation for work I'd done. Walsh stood up for cross-examination, and her first question cut right to the heart of Isabella's lies. Ms. Russo, if you felt you deserved more compensation, why didn't you simply take a larger percentage of the declared profits? Isabella hesitated. Jack controlled the books. But you had access to all the accounts, correct? Yes. You could have written yourself larger checks openly instead of making secret transfers to hidden accounts? It's complicated. It's not complicated, Ms. Russo. You stole money and hid it because you knew it was theft, not compensation. That's not true. Walsh pulled out a bank statement. This shows a transfer of $5,000 from Mr. Mallory's business account to your personal account on March 15th. Can you explain this transaction? That was for marketing expenses. What marketing expenses? Website development, advertising, promotional materials. Walsh pulled out another document. This is your personal credit card statement for March. It shows charges for clothing, jewelry, and a weekend trip to Las Vegas. No website development, no advertising, no promotional materials. Isabella's face went red. I may have used some of the money for personal expenses, but you stole $5,000 and spent it on clothes and gambling? I earned that money. By lying to your fiancé and stealing from his business? The cross-examination continued for another hour, with Walsh systematically destroying every lie Isabella had told. By the end, Isabella was crying. Her lawyer was objecting to everything, and the judge was looking annoyed. When the testimony concluded, both lawyers made closing arguments. Isabella's lawyer argued that she was an underappreciated business partner who took money she felt she deserved. Walsh argued that she was a professional con artist who systematically stole from a man who trusted her. The judge took 30 minutes to deliberate, then returned with his ruling. Ms. Russo, I find that you systematically and deliberately stole $87,000 from Mr. Mallory's business over an 18-month period. This was not a case of disputed compensation. This was theft, pure and simple. Isabella started crying harder. I order you to pay full restitution of $87,000, plus interest and court costs, for a total of $93,000. You have 60 days to arrange payment, or additional criminal charges may be filed. The judge banged his gavel, and it was over. Isabella was led away by a bailiff, still crying. Her lawyer gathered his papers and left without speaking to anyone. Outside the courthouse, Thalia and I stood in the cold Detroit air, breathing like we'd just run a marathon. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it. Empty, but not in a bad way, like I've been carrying around a heavy bag for months and finally got to put it down. She'll probably appeal. Let her. I'm done with Isabella Russo. We walked to Thalia's car, and I realized something had changed. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't thinking about revenge or justice or what Isabella had done to me. I was thinking about what came next. "Thalia?" "Yeah? Want to have dinner tonight? Somewhere nice." She smiled, and it was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I'd love to." 6 months later, Isabella was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Connor got 18 months for conspiracy. I recovered most of my money and rebuilt my business stronger than before. Thalia and I got married on a Saturday afternoon in my backyard, with Tommy, Dave, and Miguel as witnesses. No fancy reception, no elaborate plans, just two people who'd found something real in the wreckage of something fake. Isabella sent a letter from prison, asking for forgiveness and claiming she still loved me. I threw it away without reading past the first paragraph. Some things can't be fixed, but some things can be built from scratch, stronger and better than what came before. The morning after our wedding, I woke up next to my wife, my real wife,